Going over a grassy knoll.
What
does that look like?
There was like a park-type area behind a Save-On drugstore.
Mm-hmm.
And he had jumped over a curb and went onto the grass. And I figured since he was going on the grass and stuff that he might want to be on four-wheel drive. And then he said he didn't want to, he didn't want me to do it. And then it just, I'm sorry to say, it sort of turned into a game after that. And I shouldn't have done it. I realized that.
Don't put your hands up, sir. You weren't there. Did you go over a grassy knoll and go over some curbs when you were driving this car?
Yes.
Why'd you do that for?
I just made a mistake.
So it sounds to me as if both of you boys were acting irresponsibly with this car. Is that right?
Yes.
I agree.
Is that right?
Yes, I agree.
Well, Mr. Knoll, this isn't a very, very difficult situation, sir. Some damage was caused to your car. I assume you have the bills to show me what the damage was. Is that right?
Yes, the car is in
Mr.
perfect
West, I don't
working
even need to
condition,
speak to you.
Yes, you do.
Well, just a second.
Okay.
The reason I don't need to speak to you, sir, is because you originally, according to these papers that I received, spoke to Mr. Knoll, and at that time you said to him, pretty much, that both boys were wrong, and that you were prepared to pay for half the damage that was caused to the car.
I did some brief investigation before I made that offer. After they declined my offer, I had to do some further investigations, which I can show the court now, which show that what my son did not cause damage to that car.
Oh, well, I'd like to hear that, sir.
Here's a copy of the Ford Motor Company manual. And in the Ford Motor Company manual, if I may read it,
Sure.
it says to you, it says, the spin on the transmission transverse case on this 1991 Ford Explorer allows the shift between second high and four-wheel high to be made at any vehicle speed. Your Honor, once the car is engaged in four-wheel drive, the way you disengage this car from four-wheel drive is to back the car up in reverse. So by pressing the vehicle four-wheel drive button once, twice, or many times, it doesn't disengage from four-wheel drive until you back the car up, and that's how it disengages. So once you pressed it one time, it was in four-wheel drive, and it continued four-wheel drive until they later came to Jack in the Box. At that point, they backed up and they heard a ratcheting-type sound from the vehicle. That's when it was coming out of four-wheel drive.
Can I see the estimates that you have, please?
May I say something else, Your Honor?
Sure.
Chris is here to identify or to be witness to the fact that Ty has taken this vehicle to different parking lot locations, jumping curbs and parking barriers that he failed to mention to his dad also.
Mr. West, I wasn't there. You weren't there.
Correct.
This young man did something wrong. He's acknowledged that he did something wrong. Your son acknowledged that he did something wrong. They both did something wrong because they were playing around with a very expensive piece of equipment that neither one of them bought or paid for, belonged to the plaintiff. Now, your mistake, Mr. Knoll, was that when you write here, the defendant offered a 50% settlement, which we rejected as a matter of principle since we didn't contribute in any way to the damage. That was a mistake. Your son contributed to the damage. He contributed to the damage in either one of two ways. Either because he, in fact, drove the car recklessly, and or he did not, at the moment that this young man decided to push the buttons on the car that he knew was wrong, he didn't take care of this expensive piece of property the way he should have, which was to stop the car and say, get out of the car. There's nothing to say. Anything that you say, sir, is going to be an excuse, which is wrong.
No, it's the truth. You're listening to some here, and I can't allow that to
Just,
happen.
Mr. Knoll,
I just
I'm
need
not
to
listening.
have my say, that's all.
I'm not listening to anything. I'm not listening to what Ford Motor Company says, sir. I'm listening to what these two young men said.
Well,
and both of these boys seem to acknowledge that when they took your car out, they both did the wrong thing.
There's some lies over here, though. You haven't allowed him to speak what he saw.
Just a second. I listened to him. Let me tell you what he said, Mr. Knoll.
Judge Judy will continue in a moment. And later today,
if you buy them on the black market, you run the risk of getting tickets that are bogus. Now you know that, right?
real cases, real people. Judge Judy. Jim Noel says his 16-year-old son Ty was driving his 1991 Ford Explorer when Gary West's son Jared unexpectedly threw the truck into four-wheel drive, causing $1,300 worth of damage. Gary says he doesn't believe what Jared did could have caused that kind of damage and refuses to pay for the repairs.
He said, one, he drove the car over grassy knolls, up and down curbs, and he knew that was wrong.
No, one curb.
You weren't there, sir. You better stop making excuses for your son. He seems like a very honest young man. You
So
keep
am I.
making excuses for him, and I guarantee you, you're teaching him a very bad lesson. He's standing here, he's being truthful.
So am I.
No, you're not, because you weren't there. You're making excuses. And if you were savvy and know what was going on, how many children do you have?
2.
How old are they?
25, 16.
25-year-olds, boy or a girl?
Girl.
Okay. Now you have a 16-year-old son. 16-year-old boys, when they're given a hot car, react differently than 16-year-old girls. So this is your first experience with a teenage son, right? Trust me, I've had 3 teenage sons. They all act like they're 4 years old, especially when they're in a car for the first time. 2 days he's had a license so that he could drive by himself. 2 days, and you give him your car. Stop making excuses for him, Mr. Knoll. The first, put your paper down, sir. Your son did the wrong thing. Without a 2-day trial with experts from Ford Motor Company and without mechanics here who were able to testify as to what the actual damage was and based upon their expertise what caused it, I have to rely on my sense of common sense. And don't say a word. And my sense of common sense is that your son did the wrong thing and that his son did the wrong thing. And the only one who's getting stuck is him, because it's his car and he's got to pay the damage. So the damage to the car, and I am one lug nut. Let me just look through the rest of these things. Okay. The total damage to the car is $1,248. And, sir, I am awarding you $624, which is 1/2 the cost of the damage, because I believe that both of these young men contributed to this damage. Both of them did the wrong thing with your precious piece of metal. And next time you won't do it. Do you understand?
I understand.
That's all. Thank you.
You may step out. Out the back door to your right, please.
What my son did no damage to his car. I have nothing to say to this man. I don't care to shake your hand. I think you're a
Okay.
jerk.
Okay.
And now,
Bodies on Kennedy versus Belson. Step forward, please.
Rana Kennedy teaches yoga, but today she wants to teach Janice Belson a $600 lesson. She wants the money back for an apartment she never occupied.
Order. All rise. Order. Judges number 7 on the calendar in the matter of Kennedy versus Belson. Bodies have been sworn in. Judge, you may be seated.
Well, according to your papers, you two gals met about a year or more ago at a shoot for a yoga video tape. Is that right?
Yeah.
You are an actress and you're a photographer. Became friends. Then there came a time when you decided to rent her apartment.
Yes.
Went over to her apartment, gave her a $500 deposit, and then decided not to move in once you deposit back. Is that about this case?
Yeah.
That's about it.
That's it.
Well, so had you stayed in her apartment before?
No, I hadn't.
You'd never stayed there?
No.
Had she stayed in your apartment before?
Yeah, she stayed there for about 2 weeks. Shortly after the shoot, she stayed at my place.
You had never slept in her apartment before? I mean, according to your
Never
papers.
spent the night there.
Never.
Never spent the night there.
So why did you decide to move into her apartment, to rent her apartment a few months ago?
Basically, I'd just broken up with my boyfriend, was really desperate, and had no place to live. No place to live.
So you called her?
I called her. We were casual friends. We had some people in common, and, you know, we'd done this photo shoot together, and...
well, you had to be more than casual friends to call her and ask her to
I
stay
didn't
in
have
her
a place to live. I needed to move out right away from my boyfriend's place.
So what did you do?
Yeah, so I gave her a call, and she said, "Oh, please come over. I need the money. I really need. You're an angel. Come over." And I came over, and I looked at her place and thought, "Okay, perfect." And that's,
well, you had been there before.
I'd never been there before. I went over to look at her place.
No. Listen to me. Listen to me. You just told me 2 seconds ago that you had never slept there before, which means that you had been there before.
I had never slept or been there before.
Now it's you never slept or been there before.
I had never slept or been there before. The reason I went over there was to look at the apartment, check out the room. I'd never been there before.
Okay, go ahead.
So I went over there for the first time, saw the place, thought it looked cute, it was nice.